ember road, a bedtime tale of a tired medieval night, a campfire, and the quiet magic of the night. Part I, The Quiet Clearing. Sir Aldric of Rowanhelm had been riding since dawn, and now, at last, the sun dipped behind the western pines. His horse, a patient old mare named Brinna, snorted as they pushed through the underbrush and stepped into a small clearing carpeted with moss and fallen leaves. It was quiet there, quiet in a way only deep forest snow. No clang of steel, no shouts from battlements, no duties, no oaths pressing at his shoulders, just the hush of evening and the promise of rest. Aldric gently dismounted. His knees wobbled with fatigue. Days of travel had worn grooves into his bones. He built a small fire, nothing grand, just a tidy circle of stones and a handful of dry twigs. He struck flint to steel. The first spark leapt, the second caught, and soon a gentle fire flickered to life. Brinna grazed contentedly nearby as Aldric set his sword on the ground beside him and let out a long, grateful breath. Tonight, he thought, he needed no armor except the darkness, no shield except the whisper of leaves. Part II, The Ember's Song. As the flames grew, Aldric stretched out beneath an old oak, his back against its wide, knotted trunk. The fire cracked softly like a storyteller, clearing their throat before beginning a tale. Aldric smiled to himself. He had always imagined that fire held memories of all the places it had burned before. He closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. Crack pop sigh, with each ember that drifted upward like a tiny star. He felt his muscles loosen, the weight of days slipping away. In the lull of twilight, the fire seemed to shift. He lifted his head. Red-orange shapes twisted in the air, dancing, swirling, forming shimmering outlines of distant stories. First, the flames shaped themselves into a castle on a hill, its towers glowing like molten gold. Then the fire morphed into a dragon, its wings spread wide. Not a fearsome one, no. This dragon bowed its head gently, as though greeting an old friend. Aldric chuckled tiredly. "Are you telling me tales tonight?" he asked the fire. The flames flickered in answer. Part III, A Visitor in the Night. The shadows thickened as night fell. A thin mist rolled between the trees, softening the edges of the world. Aldric took out a small loaf of travel bread and shared the last bite with Brinna. She nuzzled his shoulder in thanks. Just as the night settled in again, he heard a rustling beyond the firelight. A fox emerged, a small one, with fur the color of burnt copper. It stepped lightly, cautiously, stopping just short of the fire's glow. Aldric dipped his head. "Evening, little wanderer." The fox tilted its head, as though considering whether this weary night was worth its attention. Then, with surprising boldness, it sat at the edge of the clearing. Aldric wasn't sure why, but the fox's presence made the night feel less lonely. Together, man, horse, fox, they listened to the wind threading through the branches. Part IV, stories in the flame. The fire shifted again, forming new images. A young squire practicing with a wooden sword. A bustling market square filled with music. A quiet river winding through fields of clover. Lanterns floating on a distant lake. Each scene glowed warmly before drifting apart. Aldric sighed. You remind me of places I've loved and places I've yet to see. He found himself speaking softly, more to soothe his own heart than anything else. He told the fire of his childhood, running through orchards, chasing dragonflies. He told it of battles he wished he could forget. He told it of friends whose laughter he still carried with him. The fire listened. The fox listened. Even the stars above seemed to lean closer. Part V, a long, gentle night. Hours slipped by unhurriedly. Aldric dozed, woke, dozed again. The fire dimmed, flared, and dimmed once more. Sometimes he dreamed of warm summer days, of apple trees in bloom, of Brenna trotting along a quiet riverbank. Sometimes he simply drifted, half awake, letting the forest cradle him. The night grew softer. The moon climbed high, and still the campfire burned, steady and patient, like a guardian. Part VI, Dawn's Whisper. Eventually, the horizon brightened, first gray, then silver, then pale gold. Birdsong threaded through the clearing. Brenna lifted her head. The fox stretched, yawned, and slipped silently back into the trees. Aldric woke with a small smile. His heart felt lighter. His limbs felt stronger. He rose, packed his gear, patted the moss where he'd slept, and whispered thanks to the forest. Before mounting Brenna, he paused and looked at the ashes, still warm. Thank you, he murmured. Then he turned toward the forest path, ready to continue his journey, not because duty demanded it, but because the new day invited him forward. And somewhere far behind him, in the quiet clearing, a single ember glowed faintly, then faded into the morning. Crescent moon, good night. May the steady warmth of Aldric's campfire stay with you, soft, glowing, and peaceful, as you drift gently into sleep. Part II, the path of morning mist. The sun had barely risen when Sir Aldric and Brenna began moving through the forest. Morning mist clung low to the ground, swirling around Brenna's hooves like soft silk. Every breath Aldric took smelled of dew, pine, and the faint sweetness of moss, warmed by the first light. The forest was different in daylight, not mysterious now, but comforting, like waking beneath a familiar blanket. Aldric hummed softly as he rode, an old tune from his childhood. It echoed through the trees like a lullaby, meant for someone else. Then, between two ancient oaks, a flicker of movement caught his eye. The little copper fox. It trotted ahead of him, glancing back every few steps as if saying, "Are you coming or not?" Aldric laughed. "Lead on, friend, I trust you." And so the night followed, a gift in the hollow tree. The fox guided Aldric along a narrow path lined with ferns. Sunlight speared through leaves overhead, forming shifting patches of gold on the forest floor. Soon they arrived at an enormous hollow tree, so wide that 3 men could stand inside it. Moss draped over its bark like a green curtain. The fox stopped, sat, and looked pointedly toward the hollow. Aldric dismounted and approached. Inside, he found something unexpected. A small wooden box, carved with swirling vines and tiny stars. Old but carefully made. Aldric lifted it gently. The lid opened with a quiet click. Inside lay a silver compass, its needle steady and calm despite the stillness of the air. The dial bore an engraving: "Where the heart is weary, let the road be kind." Aldric felt a warmth spread across his chest, not from magic exactly, but from something simpler, older hope. "Thank you," he said softly to the fox, who blinked as though pleased with itself. The Whispering Bridge. With the compass in hand, Aldric set out again. Brenna walked easily, ears flicking at the sounds of the waking forest. After a time, the trees thinned, revealing a long wooden bridge spanning a shallow river. It was old, weathered by time, yet strangely elegant. Ropes hung with little wooden charms, carved in the shapes of feathers, leaves, and tiny moons. As Aldric stepped onto the bridge, the river murmured beneath him. But when he reached the center, the murmuring changed. It became whispering, not frightening, but soft, like distant singing. Aldric paused. The whisper wasn't coming from the water. It was coming from the charms. He leaned closer. Dozens of tiny wooden figures swayed gently in the breeze, singing a quiet tune that carried in the air like the softest lullaby. "Traveler, traveler, gentle your pace. The morning is kind." In this quiet place, Aldric listened, heart settling deeper into calm. He closed his eyes and let the gentle chant wash over him. This forest, he realized, was watching over him, not demanding anything, not testing him, simply wondering if he needed rest. And the answer was yes. He did. The road beyond the river. When the song faded, Aldric crossed the rest of the bridge and followed the path as it curled into a valley. Beyond the forest, sunlight spread across rolling fields of lavender and wild thyme. The air shimmered with the scent. Brenna snorted happily, clearly approving of the new landscape. Aldric smiled and stroked her neck. "I think," he murmured, "that today may be gentler than the ones before." With the fox trotting parallel along the ridge, the night continued forward. He didn't know where the road would lead, but the compass in his pocket warmed slightly, as though reassuring him, "Where the heart is weary, the road will be kind." Part I, the village of Lantern Rest. By midday, Aldric reached the edge of the lavender fields. The scent drifted around him like a calming breeze, and each step, Brenna took scent clouds of purple petals swirling in the air. Beyond the fields lay a gentle slope, and at the bottom, nestled like a sleeping cat in the valley, sat a small village. As Aldric descended the hill, he noticed something unusual. The houses were painted in soft hues of blue and cream, each with lanterns hanging from the eaves. Not bright daytime lanterns, but warm, glowing ones, as though the place refused to let go of night completely. A wooden sign greeted him at the entrance. Welcome to Lantern Rest, a place for the tired, the wandering, and the gentle of heart. Aldric smiled. A fitting place for me then, a kindly innkeeper. The village streets were quiet, not empty, but slow, with people moving like they had all the time in the world. Aldric guided Brenna toward an inn called the Soft Willow, where a willow tree arched protectively over the roof. Lanterns dangled from its branches, their lights swaying softly even though there was no wind. An older woman stepped out as he approached. Her hair was streaked with silver, tied loosely behind her. She had the calm eyes of someone who had spent years watching sunsets and smiling at morning birds. "Traveler," she greeted, "you look as worn as a well-loved cloak." Aldric chuckled. "That I am." She pointed to Brenna. "Your mare may drink from the trough there. It's enchanted to ease weariness." Brenna, as if understanding, nudged Aldric's arm gratefully and went straight to it. Aldric bowed slightly. "My thanks." "Come inside," the innkeeper said. "My name is Marin. Rest is what we do best here. Tea of dreams." Inside the inn, the air smelled of warm bread and something sweet, like honey mixed with fresh rain. Marin placed a steaming cup of tea before Aldric. "It's called Dreamleaf," she explained. "Helps the mind float instead of sink." Aldric lifted the cup. The tea shimmered faintly, as though tiny stars swirled within it. He took a sip. Warmth spread through him, gentle, steady, like a blanket being tucked around his shoulders. His eyelids grew heavy, not with sleepiness exactly, but with serenity. For the first time in many days, Aldric felt safe. "Tell me," Marin said softly, "what brings you traveling alone?" Aldric hesitated. His life had been full of duty, expectations, and the constant weight of helping others. He seldom spoke of it, but here the words came easily. "I'm searching," he admitted. "Not for battle or glory, just a place where I can breathe." Marin smiled knowingly. "Then you've chosen the right road." The lantern maker. Later, as the sun dipped low again, Aldric wandered the village. Children laughed as they chased glowing butterflies, creatures made entirely of light, flickering like tiny lanterns. A soft humming drew him to a workshop near the center. Inside, a man shaped lanterns out of glass, so thin it was almost transparent. Each lantern held a small floating ember. "What are they?" Aldric asked. "Memory lights," the lantern maker replied without looking up. "They glow brighter when someone remembers something kind, dimmer when someone forgets." Aldric felt a gentle pang in his chest. "Do you make many?" The lantern maker nodded. "People forget kindness too easily, so I help them remember." He handed Aldric a small lantern, its ember pale but steady. For you, hold it close tonight. Aldric accepted it carefully. The warmth inside matched the warmth of his compass. A night of quiet light. As night settled over Lantern Rest, the village transformed. Every lantern, hundreds of them, lit up one by one. Soft gold, deep amber, warm light. The streets glowed like pathways of liquid starlight. Aldrich sat beneath the soft willow tree outside the inn, the memory lantern resting beside him. Brenna dozed nearby, tail flicking peacefully. The tired night breathed slowly, feeling the quiet of the village wrap around him. It wasn't magic that made Lantern Rest special, or perhaps it was, but the kind of magic that came from gentle hearts rather than spells. As Aldrich watched the lanterns sway in the breeze, he realized something. For the first night in a long while, he felt no burden, no urgency, no sorrow, only peace, and the tiniest flicker of hope that the world held more places like this. Part IV, the dreaming lake. The next morning came gently, with sunlight filtering through pale curtains, and a breeze that smelled faintly of warm bread from the inn's kitchen. Aldrich woke, feeling lighter than he had in months. When he stepped outside, Brenna was already waiting, her coat gleaming softly, as though even she had slept better than usual. The memory lantern hung from his saddle, its ember glowing brighter than the night before. Marin, the innkeeper, approached carrying a small basket. "For your journey," she said. "Fresh bread, a bit of cheese, and a berry tart. The lake is not far, but travelers always return hungrier than they expect." Aldrich bowed gratefully. The dreaming lake, does it truly live up to its name? Marin's eyes softened into a smile. Oh yes, not a soul sees it without dreaming something they didn't know they needed. Those words lingered in Aldrich's mind long after he left Lantern Rest behind. Through the whispering meadow, the road to the lake passed through a meadow where long grasses brushed against Aldrich's boots as Brenna walked. The wind made them sway like gentle waves. Small white flowers, moon blossoms, bloomed despite the daylight, their petals shimmering faintly. Aldrich leaned down to examine one. To his surprise, the flower's center held a tiny droplet of silver light, like a fragment of a star. Brenna sniffed it and snorted, clearly unimpressed. Aldrich chuckled. "Not everything must be eaten, old girl." The fox, the same copper-furred one, appeared again at the meadow's edge, sitting upright as though it had been waiting. It flicked its tail once, then trotted ahead. "Still guiding me," Aldrich called. The fox didn't answer, of course, but its presence felt reassuring. Together, they continued toward the lake. Arrival at the dreaming lake. When Aldrich reached the final hill, he stopped, breath caught in his chest. Below lay the dreaming lake. It was enormous, but not in an intimidating way. Its surface was smooth as glass, perfectly still, reflecting the sky so clearly that the boundary between water and clouds seemed to vanish. Soft mist curled over the surface, drifting in shapes that almost resembled sleeping figures. The air hummed with a feeling Aldric couldn't put into words. Calm, familiar, ancient. He led Brenna to the water's edge. She lowered her head and drank, and Aldric knelt by the shore. The water was warm to the touch, warm like a memory, a vision in the water. Aldric cupped a handful of the lake's water and let it run through his fingers. The ripples spread outward, and the reflection changed. Instead of the sky, Aldric saw himself much younger. Not yet a knight, a boy with untidy hair, training with a wooden sword, stumbling and laughing. Beside young Aldric stood a man, tall, steady, his mentor of many years. Sir Rowan. Aldric felt his throat tighten. Sir Rowan had passed long ago, a wound that never fully healed. But here, in the lake's reflection, Rowan smiled gently, the same smile Aldric remembered from long nights of training. The reflection Rowan spoke, not aloud, but as though the words formed inside the water itself. You carry too much weight, Aldric. Set it down for a while. Let the world hold you instead. Aldric closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the lake settle into him like a soft cloak. He whispered, "I'm trying." When he opened his eyes, the reflection faded back into sky and clouds, the sleeping islands. As the afternoon drifted toward dusk, Aldric explored the lake's edge. Far across the water floated tiny islands, no bigger than a cottage, covered in grass and old trees. He realized with wonder that they weren't anchored. They drifted slowly, peacefully, as though the lake were rocking them to sleep. Marin had been right. This was a place built for dreaming. Aldric sat on a fallen log and watched the islands drift. The fox curled beside his feet. Brenna grazed nearby. He didn't fall asleep, not fully, but the lake's quiet magic wrapped around him, and his thoughts softened into something between dreaming and waking. A memory surfaced, a warm summer day, years ago, when he and his fellow knights had picnicked by a river. There had been laughter, music, a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in a long time. Aldric touched the compass in his pocket. Where the heart is weary, let the road be kind. He smiled. The road had been kind today. Nightfall at the dreaming lake. As night settled, the lake transformed. Glowflies, tiny insects, like floating embers, drifted out from the reeds, lighting the shoreline in soft gold. The drifting islands glowed faintly, as though dreaming their own dreams, and on the water's surface, the reflections of stars were so bright that Aldric felt as though he were sitting on the edge of the sky. He lit the memory lantern. The ember inside glowed, brighter than usual, brighter than he expected, as if responding to the peace in his heart. Aldric lay back on the soft grass, hands behind his head, watching the starry water and watery stars. For the first time in a long while, sleep found him gently. It didn't drag him under. It simply settled over him like a warm, familiar blanket. And as he drifted into dreams, The fox curled against his side. The lake whispered softly. The night breathed slowly, and Aldric rested